Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly eerie. It's the mystery of the Mary Celeste, the ultimate ghost ship. And I gotta tell you, this is one of those historical puzzles that just gets under your skin. It's a story that starts out like a classic nautical adventure, but, well, it quickly turns into something far more suspenseful. Baffling, really. To grasp the gravity of this, I want you to just imagine something for a second. Picture yourself sailing across the vast, lonely expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. Out in the distance, you spot another ship. And as you get closer, everything looks perfectly fine. The sails are fully raised, the hull isn't damaged at all. But here is the terrifying question we're exploring today. What happens when an entire crew simply vanishes in the middle of the ocean? Because as you pull up alongside this vessel, it is completely silent. Not a single person is on board. We're going to look at the exact facts of this case, and I promise you, the truth here is definitely stranger than fiction. Okay, let's dive into this impossible scene. The people who first boarded the Mary Celeste didn't find a shipwreck. They found a time capsule. The sails were raised, and there was absolutely no structural damage to the ship whatsoever. But inside it was even spookier. Food was sitting right there on the table in the galley. The captain's cabin literally looked like someone had just stood up and walked out mere minutes ago. But every single person, the captain, the crew, the passengers, had simply ceased to be there. Let's rewind a bit and look at the timeline to see how this all actually began. On November 7th, 1872, the merchant ship Mary Celeste left New York Harbor. Its destination was Genoa, Italy. The weather was calm, the crew was highly experienced, and absolutely nothing suggested this voyage would become a legendary mystery. For weeks, the ship sailed deep into the Atlantic, right on schedule. And then, the timeline just goes completely dark. It isn't until nearly a month later that the ship is finally spotted drifting aimlessly near the Azores Islands. And we really need to remember the human stakes here. 10. That is the number of souls who were on board when the ship left New York. This wasn't just, a rugged crew of sailors. It included Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, and tragically, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, alongside 7 experienced crew members. 10 lives, setting off on a totally routine voyage, never to be seen or heard from again. The horrific realization of their absence happened when another ship, named the Dei Gratia, spotted the Mary Celeste. Now, at first, the crew of the Dei Gratia just assumed the people on the Mary Celeste were resting below deck, but the ship was drifting erratically. It wasn't holding a steady course at all. So the captain of the Dei Gratia ordered a boarding party when no one answered their signals. And the exact moment they stepped onto those wooden decks, the silence was deafening. The sheer emptiness was absolutely shocking. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is how these forensic clues lay out just like a detective's case board. On one hand, we have what was found. They found enough food supplies to survive for months, clothes neatly packed, and personal belongings completely untouched. But on the other hand, we have what was missing. The ship's single lifeboat, the chronometer, the navigation tools, and of course, the crew. It looked almost as if everyone had voluntarily packed up the essentials and just left a perfectly seaworthy ship. But why would they do that? Well, one massive clue lies in this number, 1,700. The Mary Celeste was carrying over 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. And just to be clear, this wasn't drinking alcohol. This was highly flammable, extremely volatile stuff. And yet this incredibly valuable, dangerous cargo was sitting right there in the hold, completely untouched. Thousands of dollars worth of goods, entirely intact. Naturally, when a ship is found empty in the 19th century, the very first thought is pirates, right? But let's actually test that theory against the physical evidence. If pirates attacked, why on earth would they leave behind a massive fortune in industrial alcohol? Why would they leave the crew's personal belongings, including valuables, completely untouched? The pirate theory basically falls apart immediately when you realize that absolutely nothing worth stealing was actually taken. So the crucial point is, if it wasn't pirates, could it have been an inside job? Like a mutiny? Again, the physical evidence says no. Captain Briggs was known to be highly respected by his crew. But more importantly, when the boarding parties searched the Mary Celeste, there was zero evidence of violence. No blood, no signs of a struggle, no broken weapons. A violent mutiny leaves a chaotic scene, right? But the Mary Celeste was terrifyingly orderly. Over the last century and a half, human imagination has certainly tried to fill that void. We've seen some truly wild theories pop up over the years to explain this mystery. Legends of giant sea monsters plucking the crew right off the deck, stories of alien abductions, or massive sudden whirlpools swallowing everyone up. And while those make for great fiction and really fun campfire stories, they have absolutely zero factual evidence to support them. We have to stick to what the actual clues tell us. And that brings us to what historians today believe is the most logical, albeit deeply tragic explanation: the invisible threat. Remember those 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol? Well, later inspections actually revealed that a few of those barrels had leaked. Now, industrial alcohol produces invisible, highly flammable vapors. If you're stuck on a wooden ship in the middle of the ocean, a buildup of those fumes is basically a ticking time bomb.
Let's move to the sequence of events and see how this builds into a devastating chain reaction. Step 1. The flammable fumes build up in the enclosed hold. The smell becomes completely overpowering. Captain Briggs, fearing an imminent explosion, decides to execute Step 2, a temporary evacuation. The crew, along with his family, load into the small lifeboat, they grab the navigation tools, and they tether themselves to the Mary Celeste with a thick rope, planning to stay a safe distance away just until those fumes clear out. But then comes Step 3. A sudden gust of wind or a massive wave snaps that tether rope, which tragically leads to Step 4. The Mary Celeste, with its sails still fully raised, quickly drifts away, moving way faster than the crew could ever row to catch up.
It's just a heartbreaking scenario, and the grim irony is captured right here. The Mary Celeste, this wooden vessel that was abandoned because it was deemed unsafe, survived the ocean perfectly. It took on a little water, sure, but it floated just fine. Meanwhile, the 10 people who sought safety in that lifeboat were left completely stranded in the brutal, open expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. The ship lived on, but the passengers were lost to the sea. But, as compelling and logical as this vapor explosion theory is, it remains just that, a theory. Because we're faced with this glaring lack of proof. Absolutely no final diary entry was ever found to explain the evacuation. Not a single survivor was ever located to tell the tale. No bodies ever washed ashore anywhere in the world. And not a single plank of wreckage from that missing lifeboat has ever been discovered. The final physical pieces of the puzzle, they're simply gone. And that is exactly why, more than 150 years later, the Mary Celeste continues to fascinate the entire world. A century and a half has passed. We have modern technology, satellite tracking, deep-sea submersibles, yet this 19th century mystery remains completely untouched by our modern answers. Every single explanation we come up with still has missing pieces. And this brilliantly illustrates the true, haunting nature of this legend. The greatest mystery wasn't a ship disappearing. It was a ship that didn't. Think about it. Ships sank all the time back then. That was a tragedy for sure, but not a mystery. The Mary Celeste just kept sailing across the Atlantic as if absolutely nothing had happened, waiting for someone to find its empty decks and untouched cargo. Just a ghost ship holding on to its secret. Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Will the Atlantic Ocean ever give up the secret of those 10 vanished souls? Or are they forever lost to history, the victims of a tragic accident we can only really guess at? It definitely makes you wonder what else is hiding out there in the deep. If you found this dive into the unknown fascinating, there are so many more incredible real stories out there that sound completely impossible, like the man who survived 2 atomic bombs, or the lake that completely emptied out overnight. But for now, the Mary Celeste drifts on in our imaginations, a puzzle still waiting to be solved.